Is it time to start?
Yes.
All right, it's time to start. So hello everyone. My name's RJ Mical. I helped make the Amiga computer, and that's the end of my speech. Any questions?
What did you make again?
Long time ago, we made that Amiga 1000, and you know, we figured it would grow. We never figured it would grow as much as Commodore grew the thing over time, and all these different models that came out, and some of them such beautiful extensions of the original idea. But we never dreamed of this. We never dreamed that all these decades later there would be so many fans that are still enthusiastically behind the thing, developing new games, new hardware. It's breathtaking to us. Every time I get together with the original Amiga people, we just cannot believe that it worked out as well as this. You know, we had big dreams for helping people get better with their lives, get better with their whatever skills they have, and unleash their inner artist or video producer or whatever. But we never imagined it would be this great, that it would be this wonderful, that there would still be so many people that are enthusiastically behind the thing we did before. And so, I mean, collectively, I thank all of you for what you've done with this machine so far. Any other questions? No, come on, let's go get a beer then. Oh, if there's no questions, I can yak for hours, but if anyone had something you'd like me to talk about in particular, yes, please.
How do you think the world would be if it stuck with Atari?
If this had gone to Atari?
Sorry, I'm going to be that guy.
Okay, yeah, the question is, what would the world look like if the Amiga had gone to Atari instead of Commodore? So after we did the Amiga, we did a game system called the Lynx. It was the first handheld color system, and we called it the Handy. Atari bought it from Epix and turned it into the Lynx. And when we found out that they were going to do it, we quit. We said we won't have anything to do with it wasn't Atari. I love Atari. I love the engineers that worked there. It was the people that were running the company, and we didn't want to have anything to do with them because of all the things we knew they had done to the industry. And so Dave Needle and I said, you know, if you're going to sell it to Atari, we're going to quit. And they said, well, we're going to sell it to Atari. So we quit, and we went and did the 3DO instead. And everything that we were afraid of when they bought the Lynx turned out to be true. We had all these wonderful, rich, warm relationships with the hardware people that we played off of, and can you knock a penny off the resistors or whatever, and we were going to be able to ship that unit at $99.99 when it first went out, and you know, Atari got it, and all of those hardware vendors said, yeah, we remember you from 2 years ago when you screwed us, and so full price, you know, you're not getting any discounts, and the machine had to come out at $130 instead. And I personally went on bended knee to how many software developers, please develop, you know, software for our Handy. We had more than 100 developers that were working on it, but then they got it, and all those software developers said, yeah, I remember that time you screwed me 2 years ago. I'm not doing it again. And so they didn't, and the Lynx turned out to be, you know, not the major player that it might have been. And I'm afraid that the Amiga might not have turned out to be the major player it might have been. You can, I don't know. No one can know, but I'm glad it worked out this way, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was there. I had just managed to start becoming part of the executive part of Amiga. I was director of software, and I started getting invited to these meetings where they were discussing what was actually going on, and it was brutal. There was not a healthy, wholesome negotiation that was taking place. It was a negotiation between a brute and a victim that didn't have much left to live on, and it all felt like that. It was not happy days. It was not happy days, and I'm afraid it might have stayed like that if they had gotten it. Well, I was going to say, on the other hand, Atari had better marketing people, but I don't even know if that's true.
Not that.
But I personally fault the Commodore marketing department for the fact that the Amiga didn't get off the ground as fast as it could have, because I don't know if you've ever seen the original ad that they put out for the Amiga. It's this, there's an Amiga computer monitor on a pedestal, and like from something out of 2001, this baby reaching for the glow, and the people are looking at this, what the hell is this thing? And no one knew what it was. It wasn't until a year later that they started bringing out really good commercials. They brought out these commercials that were done by Steven Spielberg and stuff like that. Oh man, those were cool, and those sold units. I don't know. But but the Amiga did great. It didn't sell hundreds of millions of them, but it did great. But from my own personal point of view, well, to tell you the truth, everything I've done in my career, nothing has ever made me financially wealthy. I'm not a rich guy. But I'm personally one of the richest people I know in terms of the friendships, the quality of relationships, and now to be able to bask in this, to see all this happiness and this joy and this energy still behind the stuff we did. It's just unbelievable to me. Yes, sir.
What was this? I don't know if I'm out of touch or anything. BOS. BOS was that something that was?
The BOS?
Yeah, it was an operating system.
Yeah, the question is, what's BOS? I hardly know anything about it. It was the operating system that was on the next machine.
And was that supposed to take over for the Amiga operating system at some point, or is that just?
Oh,
No, it has nothing to do with the Amiga.
I don't think it was ever
Oh,
connected to the.
Jean-Louis Gasset from Apple formed a company called B.
Yeah.
And he developed hardware that was multi-processor. And they didn't even know us, so they created BOS for the B hardware.
And it was never going to be used for Amiga.
Not for Amiga.
No.
The confusion.
Well,
for Apple,
Apple,
except that he kind of pulled a digital research on them, and so they ended up bringing jobs back instead.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a number of Amiga people were involved with BOS, and maybe that's what you're hearing
I
as
know,
that
I
goes
think I
up
heard somebody
that.
was wondering what was that all about? Because I remember playing it on a disc and I thought, well, is this going to be the future of Amiga? That's when Amiga was starting to die.
Yeah, it didn't happen though, did it? I don't know if you know Leo Schwab. Leo Schwab was one of the early major Amiga characters, and he was at B. Maybe that's where it comes from. But yeah, no, Leo never said anything like
Clear
that.
up for me.
Please.
Just wondering if Joe Pillow's still walking around out there somewhere.
All right, I'm going to tell you the Joe Pillow story if you've heard it. Haven't heard. I'm going to tell you the story if you have heard it before. So we took the machine to trade show. I think it was CES. And in the early days, the Amiga was not made up of 3 chips, but each of the 3 chips was made up of this big stack of hardware planes that were connected to each other with ribbon cables connecting the planes, and on the back side of the planes was all the blue wiring that was emulating the circuitry, and the boards had were populated with high-speed CMOS chips and everything, and we were emulating the system with this. And shoot, I lost my place. What was the question?
Oh, Joe Pillow.
Oh, about Joe Pillow. Jesus, I was thinking about the other stuff. And so we had these big giant stacks of hardware, and we took them to the trade show, to the CES trade show, but they were super delicate. You couldn't jostle these things at all. It was very finely wired and all hand wrought. And so instead of putting them in luggage, we bought them seats on the airplane so that we could strap them in. And I was traveling now with Dale Eck, one of the other software engineers, and we got the box on the seat between us. And the person was going through the airplane, counting how many empty seats there were still on the plane. And we were supposed to, if they demanded, we were supposed to take the box off of the seat and put it on our laps instead if they ended up needing the seat. So, but we didn't want to do that, of course. We wanted, to have the, and also, keep it delicate and safe. So we took a pillow and Dale's jacket And we put no, wait, I'm sorry, I'm mixing them up. These are two different stories. Sorry, I'm mixing them up. This is just Dale and me. Sorry, this is just Dale and me not wanting someone to get that middle seat between us. That's what this story was. We didn't want someone to come on the plane and take the middle seat. And so the flight attendant on this flight said, you know, they're going through the plane, counting how many empty seats there still were. And we didn't want someone to sit between us. So we took Dale's sports jacket and propped up on the seat and took a pillow, one of the pillow from the airplane, and drew the face of a sleeping person on it and put it on top of his jacket. And then the flight attendant walking through did not count that seat, just accidentally counted all the other ones and didn't count that one. They let a bunch of other people on the plane, they take their seats. There's this one seat left that has a sports jacket and a pillow with a sleeping face drawn on the top of it. And they closed the doors and the plane took off. And then after the plane took off, that person, the flight attendant, who turned out to be the head flight attendant on the flight, realized what we had done and was really angry with us for doing this, was really super angry, but was a real cranky, grumpy person that none of the other flight attendants liked. So all the other flight attendants were real happy with us and treated us to extra drinks and all kinds of stuff through the whole thing. We made a joke at one point, Joe Pillow's hungry, doesn't Joe Pillow get a meal too? And so they brought a meal for Joe and everything like that, and headphones for watching the movie. It was so cool, it was so much fun. My God, and they were all enjoying being mean to this one flight attendant. And so now, we're walking off the plane. The question was, does Joe Pillow still live? So now we're walking off the plane, and Dale and I, to walk off the plane, we each put an arm in one sleeve of his sports coat so we could put the pillow on top, and we're walking off the plane like this with Joe Pillow between us, with us holding up Joe Pillow's shoulders, and we go past that flight attendant, and the flight attendant says, "The pillow stays with us," and ripped Joe Pillow's head right off of his bone. So Joe's gone. Joe is somewhere beheaded. Okay, next. Any other questions? There was one here, yes?
I was going to ask something similar. There was an Easter egg. It was Workbench 1.2, and it mentions your name and a bunch of others. There's reference to Joe Pillow and the Dancing Fools.
Yeah, it was, I don't know what version it was in and what version it finally got cut. There used to be an Easter egg in the Amiga that was fun. I thought it was just for fun, and I took part in it. I wrote a quote to go because it was originally just a beautiful little thing. So, you know, we congratulating people. I thanked my future wife, Karen, for being so patient with me and how much I loved her and stuff like that. We wrote these lovely little messages in the ROM, and you had to do something fancy with the buttons to get the messages to show up, but they wouldn't. It was a nice thing. But then I'm director of software at this time, and then I find out that it's not just this nice thing, but they put obscenities in there. Well, we're all adults here. It said, "We made the Amiga, they fucked it up," is what it said. Oh, God. And when I saw this, I said, nope, no way, we got to take this out. And so I told the software guys, no way, just no way, we can't do this. And they said, okay, boss. And hit it one layer. And it turned out to be a disaster because they found out in the UK and yanked all the Amigas off the shelf for whatever it was, 9 weeks until we could get them new ROMs for the Amigas that they had, and it didn't sell for 9 weeks in the UK because of this. And at that time we were competing heavily against the Macintosh. 9 weeks was a real big deal, and so, haha, funny joke. Not so funny in the end. And besides, it was wrong. Commodore did so much for the Amiga. They made it such a better machine and got it out there in the real world and stuff like that. It was an angry statement by some angry engineer that I wish had not gotten in there. And still embarrassed about it to this day. Yes, please.
You involved in all in Genlock and Video Toaster?
Was I involved at all with Genlock and Video Toaster, etc.? Involved as much as a software guy could be, but I wasn't one of the hardware people. I was one of the ones that was driving for Genlock to make sure that we had it, and
You think before all that was in use?
Well, we hoped that that would become important someday. Well, no, wait, I'm sorry. We didn't hope for the video toaster. The video toaster was a miracle that came out of the blue for us. But we hoped that you know, it should be a broadcast quality signal that was coming out. And in fact, it never was. The original Amiga was not purely NTSC. When they finally brought out a PAL version, the PAL version was good. But the NTSC on the Amiga was borderline. It was like 95% there, but not.
Never the same color twice.
Never the same color twice. When I was at that period, staying up late, working late at night, I don't know if it's still around now, but back then we had these things called community channels that were on the real high end of the television dial, and I would regularly go out and see these community channels because I'd have the TV on and shows would end and the community channels would come on. And we would watch them regularly because we knew they were using Amiga computers to do these. It finally had the ability to do the graphics, the cool text and everything like that, and put it up on the TV, look good on anyone's TV. All of that was such an awesome thing to see. Until the day I flipped to that channel and there's a guru message flashing on my TV. We once went to a Peter Gabriel concert. I told this in this story in Plaisance' book. I had forgotten all about this story, that we went to a Peter Gabriel concert shortly after the Amiga was launched. We were all high on the success of the thing. And we bought ourselves fancy tickets to this Peter Gabriel concert. We got there early, and the place was filled with pot smoke and stuff like that. It was great. The hall was wonderful. But there, far away from us was not far away, but over there was a stage. And on the stage, we brought binoculars, as I typically do to a concert. And on the stage, we see the backside of an Amiga computer and the backside of a 1080 monitor. We're like, oh my God, we couldn't believe it. But we couldn't see what they were doing. We could only see the back of it. So we went on this whole big long trek to walk all the way around the theater. It was, they had black curtains that were hanging behind the stage, and we had to go back there and get around and peek. And we went through this whole adventure to get back there to see what software they were running, what music software they're going to use during the Peter Gabriel concert. And we come around the stage, and what do we see? The Guru meditation. Oh my God. I admitted to someone else here earlier, I mean, the 1.0 release of the Amiga was atrociously bad. We all hung our heads in shame with how buggy and how horrible the thing was. 1.1 was better, 1.2 even better than that, but that first one, oh, don't do that, my friends, don't do that. Oh, yes?
Oh,
yeah, you.
I was gonna, you mentioned community channels, and where I work with, we're a TV provider. We have, they're not Amigas, they're made by Commodore networks, servers that just have an MPEG stream on whatever.
Cool.
I remember those community channels, and the weather network as well, used to use them. The preview channel ran on an Amiga, and they had a version for the Atari 800 as well.
NASA did a lot of shuttle experiments on the Amiga as well.
But I remember when I was living in North Bay for about a week, the community channel was on Guru meditation.
For a whole week.
For a whole week.
Oh,
and then for another month it was on Workbench 1.3. So they got it to boot.
Yes, Faye.
First time caller, long time listener. What are your thoughts on the fact that all these years later, there's all these people in this room that come to listen to you?
Yeah, but it's hard for me to describe what this is like. You know, well, first of all, I'm just this guy like everyone else in this room. You know, you could tell I'm no genius or anything. You know, we went off and we did this thing just to have fun. You know, it was this. And I've been saying it over and over again. You just can't believe it. A bunch of people got together and said, well, let's just make a new computer. And we did. We just made a new computer. Same thing with the Lynx. Well, let's just make a new game system. And we did. I didn't realize then how hard it would be. I can't even imagine trying to do the same thing again today. It just doesn't seem possible anymore. I don't know what was magical about that time that you could pull something like that off.
I answered somebody not too long ago online that this was the last computer that anybody could really understand what was going on underneath it. The next level of stuff got the parts you couldn't buy in the store. They became devices that were so complex you didn't know how to interface with them, but you could drop TTL Logic 5-volt parts from Radio Shack. You could order them from a parts supply list, and you could build simple interfaces. And then you could build a little bit deeper and deeper. Same thing with the software. You understood the layers because it was well documented. Everybody after us, they hid them, or they were so complex it was a mountain you couldn't understand.
I just can't understand.
Yeah. They became a consumable computer after that.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Yay! Yes, Ken.
Just wanted to add, and I have a question for you. The other thing is that computers nowadays are just devices, whereas the Amiga was like having a friend. Right? I mean, it was, you had so much enjoyment with using it. It wasn't just a tool. It was adding to your life.
Okay, so to further answer your question, we did it for you. We didn't do it for ourselves. We did it for everyone that, well, I don't know about you, but everyone at the time that wanted to use a computer, that wanted to get into the new wave of everything that was happening in civilization, but was afraid, was too complicated, too expensive, too hard to understand. We drove to hit that person, hit that sweet spot of that anyone could use this machine. We used to use my older brother Ron as our example. He told me years later that it always made him feel a little dumb that we'd use him as our example. But we'd always use my brother Ron. Will Ron understand this? Will Ron be able to figure out how to use this? Will turn it on in the user interface? He was my guide constantly on the user interface. Is this something that he'd be able to get his arms around and really understand how the thing would work? And we intentionally did it to make people more powerful. That not everyone. I mean, there's especially like more on the business side. They're interested in making money and doing a proper business and having it be successful as a corporation. But we were doing it as a dream. A lot of the people were doing it just as this miracle thing that we had the opportunity to do. And we always hoped that the result of what we did would be that it would enrich everyone else's lives. That it would, the engineers, sure, but the artists, the writers, and the one we never saw coming was the video producers. My God, we didn't see Toaster coming. We had no idea it would be that great. That Tim Jennison, genius to have thought that up and to make it available. And look what it did for the Amiga. It turned the Amiga into this home video production machine. That was one of the main reasons why it was as popular as it was. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Oh no, you had a question.
Yeah.
I was just curious as to what the real story was about the Disco S.
Ah, the Disco S.
Whether it was it Commodore that was causing the issue, or was it the guys that made it were causing the issue? The original one that you guys were wanting to put in.
Which I happily don't even remember the name of. I think it was Chaos or something, but no, that's what we called it. We called it Chaos because it was so bad.
Wasn't it a tripod?
No, that Tripos is the one that came to our rescue. So originally we had hired a company, I don't remember where even anymore, I think they were Arizona or something, that was going to develop the operating system for the Amiga, the file system for the Amiga. And we had made a deal with them, they were well along on it, it was very Unix-like, it was going to be great. And then Commodore bought Amiga, and this company saw an opportunity to make a bunch of money because they knew Commodore wanted to get the Amiga out fast, and they knew Commodore had no other solution for a file system, so they I don't remember what it was, quadrupled the price or something like that. Now that it's Commodore, we're going to charge a lot more. And Commodore said, yeah, I got a better idea. No, we'll find something else. And happily, we found Tripos, the OS, the file system that had been developed in the UK.
Is this the operating system or just the file system?
Just the file system, only the file system.
So when did Fast File System come around?
Later, I wasn't part of Fast File System.
Came in after 1.2 came out.
Okay. yeah, finally.
Because I just remember, I remember my buddy had a 500, I had a 600, my buddy had a 500, he had one of those sidecar hard drives, right? And he had some weird partitioning software I didn't fully understand how to use. You could do more than 40 megs in it or something. It was a GBP product. And then, you know, I'm like, well, I can just drop this laptop hard drive into my 600.
Yeah, and it just works.
It doesn't work, yeah.
Back in the day, what they did is they booted off of a floppy disk that had FFS on it, and also the driver for the controller, because there was no auto boot. The 1.2 ROM had the problem in it. And so what they did is they loaded the driver up, FFS was already on the floppy. You could use FFS partitions on the disk. And that was effectively what Commodore eventually did when they made the 2091 auto bootable. But they used a small boot partition because their original ROMs could only handle LFS in the operating system.
Right. Cool.
Yes, please.
So Commodore bought it, Amiga it started up on its own. And I don't know all the details, obviously. I've read some things that there was animosity between the original Amiga people and the Commodore people from the East versus the Amiga from the West. Do you want to
Yeah, the question is about the animosity then between the East and the West, between Commodore and Amiga and all of that. And you know, I never really understood where all of that came from, where all of that negative energy came from, because at an engineering level, we were like two peas in a pod. The Commodore people that took on the responsibility for the Amiga inside the corporation were the engineers. Just brilliant people. There's Jeff Porter, Dave Haney, Headley Davis, the people that were over in Commodore, and I'm just naming three that popped in my head. There's dozens of them that were really sharp, brilliant people that helped make the Amiga become a real product. Part of what actually happened at the end there was that we were a bunch of kids. We were lucky we had someone like Commodore with the experience, with the muscle memory of doing these kinds of things, that they could actually make the Amiga into a real product. I think that animosity must have been about the sales and marketing effort that caused so much.
story or not an edited engineering?
Yeah, no, like for instance, there's a tape out there called the Amiga Wake, which I was never fond of because they were talking about the death of the Amiga, and look, they were wrong. It didn't exactly die, did it? So I was not fond of that. I did not take part in that party very much. But you look at that tape. It's Commodore engineers as well as Amiga engineers all hanging together and lamenting what was happening to their baby, at the end. So I don't really know where that came from, but I don't think it was really fair in the beginning. Yes, please.
Yes, I was just wondering about your work with Intuition and the GUI. Do you have any challenges or any stories that you could share with us? Besides version 1?
I'm slightly embarrassed now to admit this, but it was true. That at the time so Commodore buys the Amiga, but we don't have it's not a real computer yet. It's still largely a toy system. And one of the things that set it off is it, like for instance, didn't have a user interface mechanism. It didn't have a workbench-like thing or anything like that. So we set about to do that, to make that happen for the Amiga. And everyone else was so busy doing everything else. I stood up and said, I can do the user interface. Let me do the user interface. I'll do it for us. But I arrogantly, and this is the part I'm really embarrassed about, I said at the time, but there's only one way I'm going to get this done, and that's this: everyone leaves me alone. I don't want people asking me questions. I don't need design committees trying to bounce ideas. I need to know. I'm just going to go, and you're going to leave me alone and do it. And it was arrogant and stupid of me, and I wish I hadn't done that, but I did. And I shut myself up in my office. It was basically 7 months, almost 100 hours a week, almost every week of those 7 months to get this thing out, to put the entire Intuition user interface together. It was an engineering effort I had never done before or since. It was probably the biggest, most aggressive thing I've done as an engineer in my life. But you know, and I pulled it off. I got an entire user interface together for the Amiga. That's smaller than it sounds, because I put the user interface together, but I used the graphics. I used the layer system, the layers library that allowed me to create windows and all of that stuff. As I'm fond of saying, I stood on the shoulders of these giants, the people that had already done the magnificent work, and then I just managed to build a user interface on top of the tools that they were making available for me. But including especially stuff like the input stream, which we refined when we were doing Intuition. The input stream is a mechanism that I've only ever seen on the Amiga. I've never seen this on another computer, where there's a stream that's constantly flowing through the machine, talking about the events that are happening, and you could listen to that stream. You could take stuff out if it was for you. You could add new things to the stream if you wanted some other device down the stream to pick up on what you wanted. It was a beautiful technique for intercommunications within the system, and I've never seen that one replicated. But while Intuition was great, and I got some patents from Intuition and stuff like that, which later on I felt maybe not such a good idea, because it takes, patents often get in the way of creativity and of people being able to invent new things. But it worked out as well as I hoped it would. It had the kind of capabilities, the kind of strength that it had, and it allowed developers to be creative with what they did with their entire menuing system, not tying them into just one locked thing. But at the same time, I felt gave everyone the utility that they needed to be able to really pull off the kind of stuff that they did. And you look back now, yep, there's lots. They did so much good with the system. Yes, please.
I remember the Amiga Micro system, there was support for you to do cross-development on the sub workstation, and then you transfer it over to the 1000. Were you using that as well?
That was true. So the questions about the development environment. The fun part of the story that you didn't mention was in the beginning we had we were doing our development on a computer called the Sage computer. And the Sage, you were using the Sage, it was a little box. So it had a multitasking, multi-user capability. You could hook 4 users onto a single Sage box. In the end, we had 10 users hooked up to that single Sage box, and it was just, one CPU for 10 people using editors. You can imagine what that's like. I mean, it was just really, it was rough. But we got the job done, but then Commodore came in, and we were limping along on the shoestring at Amiga, and Commodore came in with a pile of cash. They not only came in with the excellent engineers that we got to work with, and bought off Atari so we didn't have to worry, but they filled us with cash and said, go be better than you are right now. And so the first thing we did is we went out and bought a bunch of Sun microsystems to do our development on, and now everyone's got a box. And I had a mag tape drive so I could back up every day. Oh my God, it was wonderful. Once during Amiga, I lost 1 month's worth of writing of the Intuition manual because I hadn't backed up, and then I lost it and just gone. That was the last time I didn't back up in my life. Yes, please.
You mentioned a few people that you maintain relationships. I'm just curious, of that original crew, how many of you get together with?
Yeah, how many of the original Amiga people still hang? I'm regularly in touch with, I guess, 7 or 8 of them or so, and we have a party every once in a while, and when we do, bunches of them come out. But back a bunch of years ago now was the Amiga 35th, and they had a real big party for it at the Computer Museum in Mountain View and all of that. And the Amiga people came out in droves. I saw people I hadn't seen in years. It was wonderful to see so many of those people again. But there are a few notable dropouts. One of the one that really makes me sad is Bob Paraso, the guy who was originally in charge of the Amiga department, the guy who stood up on the stage at the Lincoln Center and made the Amiga presentation when we launched it. He dropped out and doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. I'm not sure exactly why, but he's someone I would, of all the people, I'd love to hang around with him again, but, so I'm gonna try to set up dinner with him sometime next year, see if I could at least get him to go out with me. But we're all really good friends. Sadly, several people have died since then. You know, like Jay Miner, for instance, or Rob Peck, the person that originally was the technical writer for the Amiga, who introduced so many bugs into the documentation of developers. Because, sorry, Rob, if you're listening. We're talking about a bunch of hardware and software engineers that don't have time to spend with the technical writer. And so he was making stuff up, trying to figure things out on his own. And he'd send us the example program, is this right? And we say, go away. But then we find out, no, it wasn't right. And all the developers were using that technique, and it was wrong, like, no! But yeah, even Dave Morse's wife, Lorraine, we're still good friends with her, and her kids and stuff like that. You know, we've all stayed kind of a close community, but not like, you know, coming together for dinner parties all the time. And there are a few people that never showed up, and some really important people that I would like sometime to try to pull back into this. I've kicked around the idea of writing my own Amiga book someday, but write it from the point of view of from the inside, what it was like to be there. And if I did that, then I'd go and search out all of these people. Here's another name that no one knows, Darlene McDonald. Darlene McDonald, who was responsible for, I don't know what you call it in business, when you owe people money and they're sending you bills and you're supposed to disperse the money. Accounts payable. And we got her a little firefighter's hat because she was our main firefighter in the company. She'd put off bills for weeks, for months. It was amazing, the skills that she was, and no one knows her name. No one knows how important she was to the Amiga actually existing. And so I'm thinking I'm going to make a project out of it and go and dig up a bunch of these, especially the people that don't come and talk like Haney and me about stuff. I think it would be cool to hear their stories. But I have another book that I was talking about writing too, by the way, while I'm interrupting myself. I realize there's a lot of games I love, and I don't have my own copies of those games or an original copy or something like that. So I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all the Amiga games that I really love and go and visit all of those developers to interview them to do a book. And I'll write a book about the developers that worked on the original Amiga stuff, the early Amiga stuff. And then also while I'm there, have them take a copy of their software and autograph it for me. So it'll be my own personal way of going and getting my own collection of Amiga, hand autographed Amiga software from around the world, and get a book out of the deal too. Yes, please.
So I was wondering, how much have you followed post-Commodore Amiga development? I'm not talking the SCOM and all of that, but just the software that's still being made today, the upgrades and changes to Amiga OS.
The new hardware. The question is how much I stay in touch with what's going on today. And I love coming to these shows for that very reason, to see the new things that people are developing and to hear how some of the stuff that they've already developed is working. I was just saying, I have my friend Marcel over in Europe who makes replacement cases for the Amiga 500. And he told me he sold 10,000 of them last year. 10,000 of them! There's that much energy still. There's many users that want to replace the old yellowing case with a brand new shiny one. I can't believe it, that there's still this much energy, that people are still loving this thing so much.
There's even projects to recreate the chipset. With VHDL or Verilog.
Yeah, there are projects to recreate the chipset, which made me, I've got a question I've been wondering, I don't know if anyone knows, are there still some of the original chips around? Is there I heard, about raiding Commodore when they were closing and stuff like that someone put a bunch of chips in a pocket and, Frank, you're nodding yes, they're out there?
There's still some of them. They're not cheap though.
There were some many years ago that someone picked up in bulk, and they're available if you're willing to pick them up as a full chipset to populate my board.
There's not many, but there's still.
But they're making,
Well, yeah, I mean,
High-end
I've seen
replacements.
projects on GitHub where they're pretty much going through and like figuring out all the actual like transistor level logic and like writing it up in Verilog or VHDL so
Yeah.
we can run them on FPGAs.
Thankfully, that Dave's archive that he gave us. We've got a lot of new.
yeah, that's nifty. This Dave Haney published an archive of all the stuff he had. And I'm about to do the same. I just went through all of my technology pile and cataloged everything, and I'm about to release all my stuff to the real world and see what happens with this. But I got some cool old timey stuff that's never been seen before, and it's gonna be fun to get it out there. And I know we've got this Amiga 40 coming up in a couple of years, and I'm working with some of the original Amiga people right now. We're going to put together a portable Amiga museum in flight cases that we can take to a show like this and set up the original Amiga hardware. We have the original Amiga prototype boards and all of that stuff, and it's going to be nifty to set it up and let people, actually see the original stuff. And we ain't no museum. You can touch it and play with it as much as you want. Yes, please.
What was your favorite game, piece of software, and third-party hardware developed for the Amiga?
Well, third-party hardware is a toaster, a video toaster, of course. Well, that one's easy. Favorite game is hard. I've gone through this one over and over again, but I got to keep coming down to F-18 Interceptor. That's my favorite game on the Amiga. I loved a lot of the games. There's a lot of really good games on the Amiga. There's a bunch of other ones that come to mind, like Arkanoid, for instance, and I wasted so much of my time on Populous. Oh my God, I played Populous. And then we got high-end Amigas with the higher speed CPUs in them, and I popped Populous in, and they didn't use time sync for their frames with Populous. They used video frame sync. And the machine ran fast enough now that it would hit the video sync twice in one game frame, and so now all of a sudden the game's running twice as fast as normal. And I could not play Populous twice as fast as normal. They were just too good for me. But I'll tell you what, I tried real hard that way. Wait, there was a question over here? Yes, please.
How many patents have you got your name on still with the Amiga?
With the Amiga alone, I think I've got 5 patents with the Amiga. So I've got 11 altogether, and I've got another 2 that are on file right now at Google for some of the stuff that we've done there. I'm having some fun. Yes.
Just a fun question, maybe you can tell a little story to it. Just curious if you remember what year you had with Dale when you were at the CES show trying to write the Boing demo. And maybe you can tell a little story about that when you guys were sleeping in the booth.
God, can I remember the beer?
Warm beer?
Yeah, it was warm because we couldn't get it into the show. We had to hide it in the plants, and then it got warm before we got back there. But we went out with so. It's the first day of CES, and people have just gone mad over the machine. They can't believe it. And it was so cool because we had the machine, the keyboard, monitor, mouse, and stuff like that up on a table. But to hide the actual hardware, we had a curtain around the table, and the hardware was under the table. And people are telling us that they believe that we had a tape recorder, a video machine under there that was just playing video, that it wasn't really the hardware. And it was so cool to be able to lift up the skirt and show them the actual Amiga under there. God, it was so amazing. And that's one of the things that I found in my archive is I found a whole bunch of pictures from the original CES that I get to publish now. That Bruce Artwick, the Sublogic the flight sim guy, there's Bruce, sitting in the Amiga booth and stuff like that. And there's a picture of Dale and me sleeping, where we went out. It's the first day of the show, huge success, everyone's happy. The sales and marketing people take us out to a big Italian dinner. We drink lots of Chianti, we have a big celebration. And then when that was all over, Dale and I decided drunkenly to go back to the show floor and try to work some more on the bouncing ball demo, because we were working on everything right up till the last second. I mean, we were working on the demos when they're packing up the equipment to take it to the CES show, and they're walking to the car, and I'm still typing on my keyboard as we're walking to the car to do this, to get to this show, and well, there's other stories. We almost got kicked out of the first CES because the room that Dale and I were working in was supposed to have the power. But when the union guys set up the electricity in this big hall that we were in, this is in Chicago, they dropped the line that had the power from the ceiling down into the wrong room of our booth. But it was right next door where it was supposed to go. They just missed. So we picked the thing up and threw it over the wall, and almost got kicked out of the show from the union because we touched the electrical. And oh my God, the union, like, you don't mess with the union when it comes to stuff like that. It took Dave Morse talking with the union boss to talk them out of kicking us off the floor. They were gonna kick us out of the show for doing that.
How much alcohol did you give them?
So Dale and I are drunk, and we get back to the show floor, and we're drinking warm beer and working on the Boing demo, and we added some extra features to it that made it even better before the show began the next day. It was like that, we were so high on the success of it. We wanted it to be better. We wanted to give every ounce of energy we had to make the best show we could at that CES. And we did as well as we could, but back then compiles took a long time. It was real hard. And so we were called the Dancing Fools because early on in Amiga development, Dale and I were all the time working all night long, all the time staying there all night working on whatever it was we were doing, and compiles would take a long time, and Dale had this idea that instead of just sitting there waiting for the compile, because we started getting tired and falling asleep at our desks, he'd keep us awake by playing loud music, and Led Zeppelin. He especially liked playing Led Zeppelin. And we would get up and dance. We'd dance around the room together to keep ourselves awake while waiting for these damn compiles. And now it's 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever. Other employees are showing up for work. We don't know. One of them hears the music, comes look in the room. There's Dale and me dancing and goes around. And they started calling us the Dancing Fools. That was it. We became the Dancing Fools then. And we were waiting for one of those compiles at CES when we both got exhausted and fell asleep, put our heads down on the table and fell asleep. And that's how they found us and took a picture of us sleeping together in this room. But that was so cool. And this is the first time ever that we're showing our baby to the world. And we're going to kill ourselves to put the best presentation we ever had. I don't know if you've seen any of these demos before. I don't know how much of it is around. I managed to, again, when I was cleaning up my stuff recently, I found a videotape right after we got back from CES. I popped a videotape in the drive and videotaped all the demos that we showed at CES for posterity. And now I've got that tape, and I'm about to digitize it and release it. It's all the original demos as they looked when we first showed it at that CES, which was so amazing. And we had the Talking Heads demo, which was just these two robotic heads and only the lips moved. But it was really cool because it had real human voices and stuff like that. And we would take turns typing and getting the Talking Heads to say things to each other. And the guy from Sears, the main retail store, Sears, comes to the booth to see the Amiga demo because he's thinking about selling the Amiga at Sears. And Sears, by the way, makes a line of tools called the Craftsman tools. And the Sears guy is sitting there looking at the Talking Heads demo, and when he says, can it say anything I want it to say? And Dale types, and the Talking Head says to him, I buy all my tools at Sears, he says. Perfect, Dale, perfect. Yes, please.
What motivated you guys to make the bouncing ball? I've always been curious about that. I've seen it a million times, like when I was a kid and saw it in the window of a computer store, it was just like, oh my God. But
what motivated the bouncing ball?
The very beginning idea of that, what made you do that specifically?
The very beginning idea. That's a great question. I don't know anyone's ever asked me this. It started from the fact that we were talking about color palette animation. If you don't know what that is, you can. If you've seen the bouncing ball, you can imagine. The bouncing ball has a bunch of different strips, and each section that's red or each section that's white actually has a bunch of different strips. And you just change those reds to whites and whites to reds, and it looks like the ball is rotating. It looks like we're doing some complex 3D math thing. But we were just color palette cycling. It's nothing. It was trivial. If you know the Amiga, you also know that the bit planes are addressable. You can put any address in you want for the bit plane. So to get the ball to bounce, all we did was change the address of the bit plane. That was it. The program is super trivial. Takes almost nothing, takes almost no CPU time to run. You look at that thing, you can't believe. And people were stunned at the power of the Amiga at the time, because it could do something like that. And we're all secretly knowing it's like, this is just a trick, you know? But we made one huge, colossal mistake with that bouncing ball. That's not a well-known mistake. I still feel so stupid to this day. The original bouncing ball, it's got a grid in the background, and as the ball bounces, it casts its shadow on the grid in the background. And you can see in the grid, it's either light colored or it gets dark colored when the shadow is moving over it. And again, it's just a simple trick. We're just using one of the planes and moving it over the background to create that sort of shadow effect. But it was just a simple trick. There was nothing to it. What made that part so awesome was that in the original demo that you'll see on my videotape, in the background, in the middle of that grid, were the words Amiga Computer Inc. And when that shadow moved over the grid, that was one thing, but that shadow correctly moved over those text words as well. And that set that demo apart from anything else in the rest of the world. Not that we could move a shadow over the grid, but we could also move the shadow over the text. When we sold the company to Commodore, I don't know why, still to this day don't know why, but we took that text out and just left a plain grid in the background. And anyone using tricks could create a shadow over just a grid. And they did. You've seen the bouncing ball demos. I saw it on an Apple within a year. I recently saw it on a watch. I saw a bouncing ball demo on a watch. But if we had left the text in, they couldn't have done it. They wouldn't have been able to do it because it would have required so much processing power to create the shadow over the text. And in the Amiga's case, it was nothing. It was trivial. And we took it out and we kicked ourselves well, we kicked ourselves for a lot afterwards for that. Yes, please.
Just curious, you came over to Commodore. Was anybody on the development team a fan of any of the Commodore 8-bit machines, or what were you all using personally prior to your coming to Commodore?
You mean for home computers, entertainment, stuff like that? I had a C64. I don't know how many of the other people, but we all had, a lot of us had C64s, and then when we found out about Jay and who Jay was, a bunch of us went out and got Atari 400s and 800s as well. We were talking about my favorite games. I'm going to put together a list of my favorite games. But I remember Jack Attack on the C64 was not only my, no, I'm not on the 64, on the 800, on the Atari 800. And it was a huge hit around the office. People played Jack Attack all the time. It was fun. It was that thing that you're working too hard, your brain's too tight, go play a game for a little while. And it became the hit game around the office. We had no idea about Jack Tramiel at that time or any of that stuff. It was just a fun game that we loved to play. But it turned out to be true in the long run, didn't it? Yes, please.
You mentioned, I'm curious, a number of these other companies that were contemporary at that time, when the Macintosh came out, as a young developer with limited resources, did you see the other companies and look at that and say, you know what, we can do that with less people and make it cooler? Part of this, and I'm sure a lot of you probably from the same sort of age group. I remember when I bought my Amiga 1000, first year of university, somebody else had a Mac, and immediately people were like, that's interesting, but this thing, there was just a completely different level of reference. And I'm curious, when you saw that, when you knew the resources that were going into Apple, did you think, you know what, a few of us can probably do this? Was it motivating, intimidating, or what did you think when you saw that other stuff like that?
Yeah, Apple. Motivating, intimidating is the basic question here. It's a little known fact that the Amiga did better in its first year than the Macintosh did in its first year. Plus, I mean, better in every way. More software, more dependable software. The Amiga crashed less in its first year than the Macintosh crashed in its first year. And that's saying a lot because the Amiga crashed a lot in its first year. But yeah, overall, they had money. They had absolutely brilliant marketing team and all of that stuff, and so they ended up winning. But at the time, not only did we not really think of them as a competitor, because in the beginning we were doing a game system, we weren't doing a real computer. But in fact, once we started turning it into a real computer, Apple came by and kicked the tires. They came over and considered buying the Amiga company. Who knows what would have happened if they had, because the early Macintosh, in my opinion, only had one thing on the Amiga, and that was crisp-shaped pixels that you could use in a business environment to do business-related software. And the Amiga, even though the Amiga had word processors and spreadsheets and stuff like that when it came out, it was designed for the common person. It was designed to work on anyone's TV. It was not designed to work on a real crisp high-end monitor. We didn't have that ability. We didn't have the high resolutions and stuff like that. Well, we did have the high resolution, but we didn't have those crisp, tight pixels that the workplace wanted. And so it had suffered getting accepted into the workplace because of that. But we thought we had a winner. We thought that compared with all the other machines that were out there, including once we started taking on the Macintosh, we believed we were going to win. I'm still stunned to this day that the Amiga is not like #3 machine, as people have said. It ought to be. It ought to be better than the Macintosh, in my opinion. We had, except for the file system, everything else I think was superior. And one more thing about the file system, by the way. You might speak disparagingly of it. You might remember that the original Amiga, the file system was really slow on the original Amiga. And a lot of people give derision to Tripos because it was not tip-top. But you got to remember, one, they came out of the blue and rescued our bacon. We weren't going to be able to ship a machine, and they said, yes, you can use our file system. But their file system was designed for a different class of machine. Everything was done in byte operations. They had their own weird language. It was not designed to work with 16 and 32-bit values and stuff like that. And we're just lucky that we had anything at all. And I will never say anything bad about Tripos. I wish the Amiga had launched with a faster OS, faster file system, but it launched because we had them. Okay, I forgot the question though.
Apple and.
Oh, that's right, Apple, that's right. That's the end of that question. Okay, sorry.
I think one of the very first programs that I remember the Amiga 1000 being demonstrated was MusicCraft. Do you have any stories about that?
MusicCraft. No, I don't have any stories about MusicCraft except that there's again someone that doesn't get the kind of credit that he deserves is this guy Sam Dicker, who did the audio library for the Amiga, and they would not have been able to do MusicCraft if it weren't for him and his daily helping them out with every problem that they were working on. But MusicCraft was great, and I loved it. But there was another one that EA did that I really loved.
Deluxe Music.
Instant Music.
Oh, Instant.
Instant Music. Do you remember Instant Music? Instant Music is a title where I've seen it done a lot of times since. This is the first time they did it. It is playing a song, and you get to play along with the song on the mouse. You can play the lead part of a rhythm song that it's playing. And it forces the keys that you pick, the notes that you pick, to be in the key of the song. So you can't go wrong. You simply can't go wrong. And all you got to do is close your eyes and go, and it works great. It's just wonderful. But if you go after it intentionally and really, try to get it to dance for you, you can do amazing stuff with it. MusicCraft I don't know too much about. Graphicraft I know a bit more about. I'll tell you a quick story about Graphicraft. I did Graphicraft myself, and I did it in 2 weeks or so. If you've ever touched the thing, it's really rudimentary. It's just simple. We needed something that we could show. And we had a company that was doing the paint program for us, and they had doing it for a year and a half at this point, and they hadn't gotten anywhere, and we're like, and they're complaining, the computer's so hard, we don't know how to use it, we can't get it to do anything. So I wrote Graphicraft in 2 weeks to show them that not that hard after all, folks. You know, I mean, really, come on. But Graphicraft was always just a toy. It was never supposed to be anything serious. It was just a toy. But it was that toy that almost screwed us at the Amiga launch, because the flood fill. I was supposed to, and I neglected to take flood fill out of the menu options.
But they did the flood fill. It worked.
Miracle.
Now,
that's all I can say. It was a miracle.
Here's a question about the demonstration. They have a scene in there where they digitize a picture of the lady. I can't remember her name. Debbie Harry. Yeah. And it seems almost instant. It comes into the Amiga. Now, I used to have a DC TV, and it was a slow scan of the digitizer. Was it really that fast, or did you guys have a file saved to the RAM?
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't know about the fast or not. I can't comment on that, but no, there was no fake up there. That was all real stuff. That was a real live demo. And if you don't know the story, when we did flood fill, we got the logic wrong. And the way the flood fill works is it knows the starting and the ending pixel, and it'll fill between the two of those. But if the pixels come together and are side by side, it would fail and flood fill the whole universe for you, and not stop until everyone was dead. So I you know, and we're going to launch, and there was nothing to do, nothing to be done about it. So and they already had it fixed to the hardware. They already knew what to do. It just wasn't ready yet. And so I was supposed to take flood fill out of the menu options so that the artist, who Andy Warhol was doing this, wouldn't touch that. And I forgot, and and we all saw him reaching for the flood fill. But most of all is Jack Hager, who was one of our artists at Amiga, who was standing next to Warhol when he's reaching for that. And go watch that videotape and look at Jack Hager's face at that moment, man. His face speaks for all of us. No! But he clicked it, and it worked. And to this day, still, it's still one of those miracles we can't believe happened. I don't know what dumb bit of luck shined on us that day. Man. Yes?
Hi. One of the later generations of the Amiga was driving the first generation of virtual reality. I actually was a technician and worked on those machines during my bachelor's during the 90s. I'm wondering if there's any contexts or applications that you found surprising for the Amiga when it was out in the world that you might want to share with
There, you know, were there really cool, unexpected things other than the video toaster that showed up on the Amiga? One is hold modify mode. I personally thought it was an interesting gimmick, but no one would ever be able to do anything real with it. Boy, was I wrong, man. The stuff that people were able to pull off with it. I guess the performance of some of the software really surprised me, like the flight sims in particular. There's the F-18 Interceptor or the Sublogic's flight sim were so good, were so spectacularly good that you know that was shocking in of itself as well. But it was not until later that people started creating all the additional add-ons to the hardware. That, well, that's same thing in my case, but yikes, I could get in trouble up here. Oh, and I lost what I was going to say, but there's also there was another device, an early digitizing device. I can't remember what. The DigiView, yeah, the DigiView that also, you know, was surprising to us. But I guess even more surprising would be the fact that it was about a year ago I saw a web browser on the Amiga computer, and I said, "A web browser? We got a web?" He says, "I've got a CD drive." I was like, "Oh, CD drive?" You know,
my table and I have a web browser. Yeah.
No, I got to come over and see it again. I just can't believe this on the Amiga.
There's a few of them.
Although it's got to take like half hour to load a page, doesn't it?
Well, it depends on
But they don't, one of them doesn't support JavaScript and the other doesn't support CSS. So.
Small details.
The ones that do render properly are horribly unstable and always in data.
Yeah.
What's the name of the
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now.
Eyebrows.
NetSurf.
NetSurf, yeah.
NetSurf.
iBrows just came out.
Eyebrows is okay, but it doesn't support anything above Web 1997. So it does SSL, but it'll handle that myself.
Eyebrows. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a quick story I told recently at Google, because we're working on all this artificial intelligence stuff at Google, and I made the observation, because I'm now driving my technology to create really interesting, fun stories and jokes and stuff like that. But I made the observation of my coworkers that computers someday probably will be able to compose stories as well as we can. They probably will be able to tell stories to us, but I don't think a computer will ever be able to tell us a good story or tell us a good joke as well as a human does, for one key reason. A computer doesn't have the eyebrows. And you need eyebrows to tell a good story. Okay, yes, please, Ken.
I know you're mostly software, but I was just wondering if you remember why Commodore decided to use a non-standard parallel port on the K1000?
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. Let's get Haney out here, he might know. No, I don't know. That seemed like a dumb decision, didn't it?
Probably saved 2 cents.
Yeah. Any more? Yes, please.
Speaking of demos, have you ever witnessed any of the European demos in came out later?
I've seen a lot of them.
Really nice.
I was invited to the assembly party in Helsinki in 2001. I was invited there because I was working for a Finnish company at the time, and I went, and then because I was there, they made me one of the judges of the demo contest and gave me the Amiga computer to judge for the demos. But I said no, that wouldn't be right. I didn't, and so I stayed out of it because I knew I'd vote for the Amiga demos more than any of the other ones. But then, to my great delight, it won. The Amiga won that year, and I got to stand up in front of everyone and announce that the Amiga was the winner of that year's demo. I don't know if you know about the demo scene. Probably everyone here does, but man, what a bunch of mad engineers those people are, pushing the machine every ounce of strength they can get out of it. I'm really impressed with everything that they do. Delight to behold. I'm glad whenever they invite me in. But I was never one of them. I was always the one that saw those messages that they put on the cracked software that I was.
One question, I guess, you mentioned AI, you mentioned that it's a large, we've talked about the large corporate world of computing these days, and it's becoming personalized, so we don't see a lot of opportunities where you have a small person anymore. Are you optimistic? You work with a lot of engineers that, are you seeing some minds where one day you might think you get together half a dozen, a dozen people who will actually come up with something that will be able to change lives, or have we moved past that?
So the question is, is it still possible for a small group of people to change the world like that, or have we moved on? And part of me feels like we moved on. That the amount of money that you would need and the investors these days are a lot more sophisticated than they were during the Amiga times. In case you don't know, there's a group of dentists that were tossing, should we do an ice cream company? Should we do a computer? I don't know which. It's like it's craziness that it was as simple. It was that naive that everyone thought you could do something like that. I don't think people think that way anymore. I don't think anyone thinks that way in the hardware space. But Flappy Birds was one guy in his garage, and there's lots of really good software that's being developed today where you don't need a whole organization, 1 or 2 or 3 people. You can put together good software now. And so I still have hope for the little things, but man, big hardware, whew, I don't know.
When you're having beers or having dinner with these guys, I think one thing you say is there's a bunch of people in Toronto whose lives were affected, many of us impacted for generations. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, but like I said, and as you're seeing for yourself, I'm just this guy, you know, I just happen to be lucky to be there, and I'm so happy to be here today, being able to talk with you and share some of these stories and stuff with you. It fills my heart.
Cool.
Is that it? I don't know how much time, I have no idea what time it is or anything.
Not time, but yeah, maybe you want to.
No, I don't want to stop. Are there more questions? Yes, please.
There was a name that you mentioned, somebody, his wife was named Lorraine. In an episode of Miami Vice, the computer was named Lorraine, was Robin's World or something? Is that the same person?
Wow, I don't know. I didn't hear about this. There was a episode of Miami Vice that had a computer named Lorraine in it, and I don't know.
It was an Amiga that they used for it, though.
And they used an Amiga, and they called it the Lorraine? I gotta go look this up. That is so cool. Lorraine was the boss of the company, Dave Morse. Lorraine was his wife. And when we did the chips, we gave the chips female names, and then the main board itself we called the Lorraine. That was the name of the main motherboard of the original Amiga. And you know, we did it as a way to honor her, but the true story, she happened to pop her head into that hardware lab one day when the Lorraine board itself had failed. And we were all cursing out Lorraine at that moment when she came into the, honest to God, true story, like, oh no!
So that's how it got there.
Yeah. And then that was the same day that the boss of the company, Dave Morse, was blocking the door to the software lab, and I wanted to get back to work. And so I said to him, just jokingly, "Get out of my way, I'm a busy guy." And that became the company slogan. Hey, we're busy guys. It became the company's slogan. I did not mean that to happen. Same thing happened to me at 3DO. They were sitting around a conference table discussing slogans for the company. I popped my head in to ask a different question to one of the people in the meeting. And I saw what they were doing. I said, the slogan ought to be, hey, what are you playing with? They thought it was awesome, and they used it as the slogan for the company for about 6 months. Oh, I don't know, I wouldn't have done that myself. Anything else? Yes, please.
Could you talk about Jay Miner or Trip Watkins or all the people like, Jay Miner?
Yeah.
Jay Miner was one of the kindest and most warm people I've known in my life. He and I became instant friends, and his dog just loved me. I still don't know exactly what that was, but Mitchie just loved me. I was the only other person in the company. He'd jump off of Jay's lap and walk over to my desk and jump up on my lap for a while and stuff like that. And it might have had something to do with the dog treats I had in Nora. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't know what that was, what attracted that dog to me, but that dog was a perfect reflection of the kind of decent and kind person that Jay was. He always invited people over to his house for parties, and Jay was an avid bonsai artist, had a backyard that was just filled with bonsai trees and warm house. His wife, Carol, just a decent, wonderful human being. You always felt at home as soon as you walked in. And back in that corner over there, Jay Miner had a hot tub. And Jay Miner's rule in his hot tub was no clothes. You want to go in the hot tub, no clothes. And a bunch of us used to do that with Jay back in the day. Oh boy, those were interesting times. But the biggest thing I would say about Jay Miner, though, the biggest thing is his heart. But the second biggest thing was his heart as well. When we were near the end of the company, we were almost out of money. And the word in the company was that we were almost out of money, and everyone was already thinking, this is it. We're at the end. And because we were thinking that, we knew that if we missed a payroll, that would be it. Everyone would start looking for other jobs. And we didn't have enough money to make that payroll before the whole Commodore Atari thing worked out. So Jay Miner took a second mortgage out on his house and gave the money to Amiga so that they could make that payroll and we wouldn't lose the employees. That's the kind of person that Jay Miner was. Trip Hawkins, I have, you know, I don't know him that well. We didn't get to know each other that well during 3DO stuff, but we got to know each other a little bit. He taught me how to rock climb, for example. He took me out and to this place over near where we live, and we spent an afternoon. He taught me how to rock climb. We spent about 3 hours climbing a rock about this tall, you know. You put your foot in your hands and this and that, and he was teaching me all the technique, but at the end of the day I was doing, it's about 20-meter tall cliff that I was going up, and he was belaying me down, and I got to do that leap across this space and everything. It was very interesting. And Trip Hawkins, when we're out getting ready to leave on this trip and getting the gear together, his wife, Trip Hawkins' wife, is making us sandwiches in the kitchen, and we took, it was like, so, you know, again, it's the same sort of thing, although, you know, I don't know about, Trip probably is, I've never seen Trip be humble, so I don't know, but he's just this guy finally as well, you know. I've had a chance to spend time with Wozniak. He invented the Apple computer. He's just this guy. He's just a lot of fun to hang around with and tells bad stories, you know. That's the most amazing thing about this to me, is that, you know, we're all in this together, and it could have been a different roll of the die. It would have been you instead of me, you know, in that position. It's the cool thing about all of this is not really who did it, but what it is that we all believe in and what we want to get behind and support and make better. Any other questions? That's it, Thank you all.